let's talk about roads in specific, because you've set out a very ambitious target in the budget as far as roads are concerned. The Prime Minister in Parliament said that you've gone up from about 5 kilometres a day now to 10 kilometres a day. The Roads Minister set a target of 25 kilometres a day. It is an ambitious task, but do you believe that without the requisite clearances as far as issues like land, for instance, are concerned, or being able to get the private sector on board, these kind of targets are going to be realised?
Obviously, the land acquisition bill is very important in that regard, but I think the Honourable Transport Minister has been very clear about his determination, and he is working very, very hard to ensure that many of these stalled projects are actually executed and get the attention that they deserve. So I have a lot of confidence, in fact, and everything that we are hearing here in the Finance Ministry is that these projects, in fact, are moving forward. Yep. And that's exactly why in the budget we have significantly increased the allocation as far as roads are concerned.
You've also significantly increased the allocation towards the railways. How soon are we likely to see things move as far as railways are concerned? Several promises that the railway minister has made. Bringing private players on board as far as station redevelopment is concerned. Of course, FDI has not been talked about in the budget. They've talked a lot about multilateral agencies funding. They've talked a lot about partnering with governments and so on and so forth. Is FDI a bad word in that sense, even though 100% has been allowed as far as railways are concerned? But are we shying away from private FDI?
I think the Honourable Railway Minister has been very clear about his priorities. The railways have been chronically starved of investment for quite a long period of time. And as a result of that, there is in fact a whole list of very high return projects that are available there in terms of getting going and being shovel ready and really moving forward very quickly. And so the 1 lakh crore investment plan this year, of which hopefully 40,000 crores or so is coming from us, is something that will move forward very, very quickly. And there are different nuances there. There are different types of projects. Some, of course, are pure railways. As the Honourable Railway Minister said, when it comes to stations, that's obviously an area where there can be, in fact, terrific public-private partnership, and he wants to do it in a very transparent and clear manner. So I think as far as railways are concerned, we should be quite confident that, in fact, that will move forward very quickly because they've been so starved of investment. And the good news for all of us who are using the railways and all of us as citizens of this country is that A, it's going to really make the railway experience much nicer, and B, that the economic and social returns from those projects are going to be very high with strong multiplier effects.
In terms of out-of-the-box revenue-generating ideas, how big is something like land monetization going to be as far as your government is concerned?
Again, it depends on the sector, Shereen. I mean, certainly as far
railways? In that context, yeah.
As far as railways are concerned, clearly, with the stations being such a prime asset for them, and in such crowded and congested and sort of prime real estate areas, I think certainly for the railways, the monetization of the real estate is extraordinarily important. But we have to think about real estate in a somewhat more out-of-the-box way as well, because the railway has right of way, it has significant land on many important corridors and so on, and so for them, adding a second line and a third line on those corridors is eminently possible. And so they will be able to leverage the land holdings that they have, the real estate that they have, to improve their functioning also quite dramatically. So all of this will really, I think, add up, because we are quite committed and determined to push forward on the investment side.
As far as disinvestment is concerned, again, a very ambitious target of almost 70,000 crore rupees, and historically we've seen disinvestment is an area where targets have not been met by previous governments and your government as well. Let me ask you about strategic disinvestment, because this is the first time your government has articulated a vision but not a policy yet as far as strategic disinvestment is concerned. You've also talked about divesting loss-making public sector companies. What should we understand strategic disinvestment to mean? Should we even expect that, for instance, Air India would be up for a strategic disinvestment, that BSNL or MTNL would perhaps be candidates as far as strategic disinvestment is concerned? Is 51% going to be the threshold? What should we expect strategic disinvestment to mean?
I think really what we imply with strategic disinvestment is a flexibility in our thinking about various approaches that we will take. So, let's wait and see exactly how the flexibility plays out.
Okay, let me move on and talk to you about the other big project that the government had made an announcement on when you came to office, and that was the Smart City city project. You talked about 100 smart cities in the previous budget. This time around, there's no number that's been given. I know some have been identified, both greenfield as well as brownfield. 6,000 crore rupees is not going to be enough from any point of view as far as funding the smart city project is concerned. Is there a hesitation now? Because our understanding is that things haven't really come together as was the expectation of the government, particularly for the Smart City project.
No, I think as far as the Smart City project is concerned, we are in fact moving forward. We've signed a number of agreements, for example, with the United States of America. We have, really good clarity now on exactly how this is going to work. But I don't think the number 6,000 crores is really indicative of our commitment and our efforts in this regard. There are many different ways of getting these smart cities off the ground. I mean, if you look at Gurgaon, for example, and you ask how much public money went into Gurgaon versus how, artfully and how strategically was it developed on the private side. So there are various ways in which you can get these kinds of cities, these satellite towns and so on, develop by making sure that, the urban planning, the land use and everything else is done in an appropriate way so that it becomes self-financing if indeed you manage it correctly.
Let me move on and talk to you about the other big announcement, and that is the Goods and Services Tax. You've committed yourself to an April 1, 2016 timeline. Our understanding is that the first CST compensation, which in a sense will pave the way to getting the states on board of 11,000 crore rupees, will be paid shortly. You will then go on to a second tranche of about 15,000 crore rupees and then a third tranche. Do you believe that an April 1, 2016 timeline is a done deal, or do you believe that there could be some slippage? I'm not talking about 2016 becoming 2017, but the fact of the matter is that you will probably be able to take up the Constitutional Amendment Bill only after the summer recess of Parliament. Given that, do you believe that we will be ready for an April 1, 2016
so as far as
rollout?
GST is concerned, Shereen, as you know, this is a very, very high priority for us as a government. We made, very significant efforts to ensure that there is, in fact, a consensus across both the center and the states to get it implemented. And, based on the last set of discussions that we've had with the empowered group of finance ministers from the various states, I think that consensus has emerged, and we now have, all the different elements of that worked out. So we have a very broad-based consensus there, and that consensus extends across different parties. So when we bring the constitutional amendment into Parliament, our hope very much is, because of the consensus that we forged, the good faith with which we've negotiated the GST, that we will in fact get the 2/3 majority in the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha to pass it. Our hope is to be able to pass it in the budget session itself. Because as I said, it is something that has very, very broad consensus attached to it, and therefore we should be able to move it through and get it done. But thereafter, what we have is a fairly complicated legislative process, because we have to then get 50% of the states to agree. Then the GST bill has to be passed in Parliament, which of course has a number of contentious, complicated issues attached to it. And then that same bill has to be adopted by the state assemblies as well.
What about the rates? Because at this point in time, I understand that the revenue neutral rate is being reworked. So the hope is that it will be reworked and we will arrive at a more moderate rate than what was presented by the empowered committee. What would be an ideal GST rate? The global average is between 16 and 18%. That would be the hope for the GST rate in India. It's unlikely to be anything close to that. The rate for now is in excess of 24%, in fact 25 to 26%. What would be the ideal GST rate as far as you're concerned? The ideal GST rate is the one that's revenue neutral, so that everybody's happy. That's the ideal rate. That's what we're working towards. But remember, I'll tell you... But won't a 24-25% rate backfire?
No, but Shereen, you have to look at it in terms of what it does to the actual price of goods and services. Because right now the problem is that we have a very inefficient sort of cascading tax structure, which means we have tax on tax on tax. When we take out a lot of these taxes, yes, it is true that you pay for it at destination, for sure, but because you've eliminated a lot of taxes along the way and you obviously avoided the cascading effect and so on, ultimately in terms of the price that the consumer is paying, we'll have to see what that all ends up being, but it could very well be quite reasonable.
Okay, very well be quite reasonable. Let me now ask you as far as corporate tax rates are concerned, and you've presented a roadmap of bringing down corporate tax rates from 30% to 25% over 4 years. The hope is that you will stick to that plan, but the bad news is that Indian governments have very often often not stuck to the plan and have faltered on both their targets as well as their achievements in terms of what they'd laid out in the budget. And that concerns people because 4 years is a long time. The possibility of slipping on the commitment that you've made in the budget?
Well, this is
given the fact that, at this point in time, the economy is yet to rev up, so your tax buoyancy is yet to kick in.
Well, this is a government that's led by, Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, who is a very determined person and somebody who's steadfast and very sure of himself in terms of making commitments and keeping to those commitments. So I'm very confident that we will in fact be able to get to that 25% rate and be able to eliminate those exemptions which make life so difficult for corporate taxpayers. So I think we've set out a good roadmap. We've set a target. When the Honorable Prime Minister, the Honorable Finance Minister, they set a target, they are in fact quite good at achieving those targets. So we should have confidence.
Irrespective of what happens as far as revenues are concerned and tax buoyancy is concerned, you will stick to that 4-year timeline?
We've said all along that our effort there is in fact to do it in a revenue neutral way. And so it really becomes a question of how you stage it, right? Which is, which exemptions do you take out? And as you take those exemptions out, how much more tax rate reduction can you do? So we have to stage that as we go along, but really the goal is to get to an end point of 25% and a fairly clean tax structure with very few exemptions, if any.
Manufacturing and the Make in India dream that this government has had, and perhaps there is criticism that not enough has happened in this budget as far as Make in India is concerned, or to be able to achieve that dream. Yes, there is 20% depreciation on plant and machinery, and maybe you understated that in the budget, some would say, but do you believe that that target of 25% of GDP is achievable? We've missed it. We've been talking about it for over a decade now. Do you believe that this 25% share of manufacturing to GDP is really an achievable target over the next few years?
Yes, I agree that the target for Make in India is a challenging target, and that's why we really have to work hard against it, and we should set an aspirational target and work towards it.
Well, we do hope that all of that does indeed fall into place. Jayant Sinha, thank you very much for speaking to us and for addressing the audience at the London School of Economics. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.